Are you a savvy investor looking for a game-changing way to invest in property in the UK? This could save you thousands of pounds in tax if you know how to play it right. For many years now, landlords have been buying properties in limited companies, mainly because of the tax reasons. But here's the kicker. This creates a massive opportunity on the buy side. When you take over shares of a property business, so that's a limited company that owns property assets, you don't have to pay the stamp duty because the underlying owner, that being the company, has already paid the stamp duty. That means if you take over the shares of a company, you pay a tiny 0.5% stamp duty on the cost of those shares rather than stamp duty land tax. So let me break it down for you. If you were looking to buy a portfolio worth £2 million, you're going to be paying over £250,000 in stamp duty land tax. But if you bought the same portfolio wrapped in a limited company structure, you pay only £10,000. So the burning question is, how do you obtain the financing for such a transaction? Now, if you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Jonathan. I founded SPV Mortgages, which is a specialist finance broker, around 7 years ago. We've helped hundreds of property investors build successful portfolios over that time. My channel is all about the experiences I have working with them, sharing them with you. There are three ways to finance this type of transaction. First is bridging finance. The second is a buy-to-let refinance, and the third is a buy-to-let purchase. Now, I'm going to break down each one based on how quick the transaction can go through. Quickest and expensive first. So bridging finance historically has been the go-to finance mechanism for purchasing properties, and the good news is the majority of bridging lenders out there understand that when you purchase shares in a company that already owns a portfolio, you don't pay stamp duty land tax. So here's how it works. You use bridging finance initially for the initial transaction, so that is the acquisition transaction to purchase the company that already owns the properties. Once the shares have changed hands, so you are the rightful owner of that company that owns those assets, you can then refinance the whole portfolio on a portfolio loan with the lender to clear the bridging loan. Now that creates certain benefits for you because with bridging finance, typically you have to put down a bigger deposit, so then you can take some of that initial acquisition cost back out of the transaction to reinvest elsewhere. So let's look at the pros and cons. So with bridging finance, you can act very, very quickly, and that will go in your favor, especially if you've negotiated a discount based upon you looking to be able to move forwards with the transaction very quickly. But there is a trade-off. Bridging finance is one of the most expensive products that we have access to across the whole of the market. So it might not be ideal in every situation. So there's a very clever and much less common way to purchase a portfolio which is already sitting in a company, and that's through refinancing. Now, during that refinance stage, what you do is you change the shareholding. So this method can be significantly cheaper than bridging finance, but there are a few twists and turns that you need to be mindful of. So imagine you're eyeing a portfolio worth £2 million that currently has a debt of £1 million. You've agreed a purchase price of $2 million for it, and what you do is you change the ownership structure, so you change the directorship and shareholders prior to the application moving forwards. So here's how it can work. The current shareholder has 90% of the shares, drops to 10, and you take 90%. You then become the sole owner of the property business. The lender, based on that new structure, offers you £1.5 million, so that's 75% of the value of $2 million in lending. That 1.5 million goes to pay off the million, which is owed to the existing lender, and the 500,000 which is left can be paid to the original owner. Now you own 90% of the company and the original owner owns just 10. Now here is where things get very interesting. Because they only own 10%, the new lender, lending 1.5 million, will completely ignore them for the application process, which means that all of the documentation, the paperwork, the legal side will move forwards in your name exclusively. And here's the big bonus. Because you've only paid 0.5% tax on the cost of shares, that property transaction has effectively saved you almost £250,000. Now, at the end of the fixed rate period, when that initial product expires, you'll still owe the original owner £500,000. So the idea is you take one product out right now, and then you refinance again later on, releasing further equity in order to pay them off. Once they're paid off, you then become the sole owner of the company. This type of strategy might not be for everyone though. If you're looking at succession planning, so there are family members that are changing shareholding, this would be ideal because both parties remain owners at some level of the underlying asset, which is the company. Now, For those who want just a clean break, so you've got buyer and seller wants out, buyer wants in, this type of strategy is not going to work. But it's really, really important to note that this strategy is only effective and can only be treated as a refinance if the original owner remains a shareholder. Now, the latest and most exciting way to purchase a portfolio which is already held in the company, it's still in its trial phase, it hasn't been written into the policy, and this is where you're using buy-to-let lending to take over the company, avoiding bridging finance. So this game-changing method is called a share purchase transaction. So this is where you're using buy-to-let lending to literally purchase all of the shares in a company that holds property assets. So how does this work? So let's just say that you're eyeing a portfolio worth £4 million. We approach the lender on the basis that you are looking to purchase the company that owns the portfolio without any change in shareholding. And this is really important. The lender will actually assess the application without you being named on the limited company, which is completely unique. Now, if the properties are all the same, let's just say that you're eyeing a portfolio with just HMOs, the lender will lend across all of them, which is fantastic. Now, if the portfolio has a mixture of properties, let's just say standard lets, HMOs, semi-commercial and commercial, the lender will break down the loans based upon the type of properties within the portfolio. So if you had, for example, 4 different types of properties, there'll be 4 different applications. But the good news is there is a lender that will lend on all of those asset classes, and it literally is 4 applications. So what's the real kicker? Well, it's just one lender that's going to process all of these applications. So it's the same set of documents. So there's a lot of efficiencies built into this type of transaction. And the best part, you can avoid bridging finance. You're moving literally directly into buy-to-let lending, which is significantly cheaper than bridging. But wait, it does get better. So if you've actually got a portfolio in the background that has equity in it, you can apply to the same lender, refinance the existing portfolio in order to buy the new company structure. And you could even put that company structure into some sort of holding company structure so you can move the profits around from company to company. And once again, the biggest bonus out of this type of transaction, you pay 0.5% on the cost of shares from a tax perspective. So if you're not in a position to refinance your existing portfolio in order to buy a new one in a new limited company, step 1 for you could be looking at the assets that you already own. So forget more acquisitions, look at the existing portfolio and see if you can increase its value. And if you're interested in understanding how to do that, watch this.